lighting.
Thank you for tuning in to Spiritual Alchemy Transfigurations, the podcast. I'm your host, Julianne Guthrie-Smulson, bringing you woo-woo for your boo-hoo. The intentions of this podcast are many. One of those is to bring on guests to share their experiences, stories, and what they do to bring their light to the world. Another intention is to help viewers expand their consciousness with interesting guests and topics. My guest tonight is Bruce Olav Solheim. This is my 19th podcast, and I'm honored and blown away to have Bruce on my podcast because he's been on AM Coast to Coast with George Norrie. So it's freaking cool to me. Outside of just being like super interesting, Bruce is a man of many hats. He's an author of several books, comic book series, plays, college professor, speaker, former radio host, and a psychic medium. You also served our country in the Army as a prison guard and helicopter pilot. Tonight, Bruce and I will be discussing timeless Trinity, among things. Bruce, thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me, Julie.
Is there anything you'd like to add that I might have missed in that introduction?
I think you covered it pretty well. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of stuff. I have a lot of interests. I have a lot of hobbies. I have a lot of interests. And once I get into something, I go fully into it. And, and then when I get to a point, then I'll move on to something else. I never run out of things to do, I guess.
Fantastic. I felt a sense of synchronicity while reading your book, especially, your journey to know yourself and exploring the dark recesses of your subconscious memories and your experiences. In Timeless Trinity, you write about hypnotherapy to be regressed in order to retrieve those memories with your experiences with aliens in particular. You want to share about your experience with hypnotherapy and
Sure.
I'm curious what really drew you to hypnotherapy and wanting to get those memories.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that Timeless Trinity is the third in the trilogy of paranormal books. And it's not like I've been writing paranormal books my whole life. I've had a paranormal life, but I only recently, actually in 2016, I decided to write about it. And part of the reason it took so long is because I am a college professor, and I was really afraid that I would be fired or that my colleagues would, I'd be the laughing stock of the college. And so I was really afraid. But in October of 2016, so about 4 years ago, a friend of mine had just passed away named Gene. And he was a family friend, Norwegian American parents, just like me. We grew up together, and he passed away, but he came to me in a vision. And this is not unusual. I've had a lot of visions with people who have passed on in my life. And he told me, Bruce, now's the time to tell your stories. And I said, what stories? He said, all the paranormal stuff, everything. The fact that you're talking to me. How about that for a start? And I said, okay. And he said, okay. And I said, well, what's it like to be dead? And then I started with that obvious question, right? And then he said, well, I don't really feel like I'm dead. I'm talking to you. I'm alive, right? To you, I'm talking to you, communicating with you. And I said, yeah. And he said, I can explain it this way. Where I am in the spirit world, there's no future, there's no past, there's only the now. It's the eternal now, forever. And I said, that's really cool. And he said, it's timeless. And you don't really have to be afraid. Because I said, well, yeah, I mean, everybody's afraid to die. And he said, well, yeah, but you don't have to be afraid. I mean, live your life, don't waste your life, but you are timeless. We're all timeless. And I said, can I use that as a title of the book? And he said, yeah, that's the whole idea. I'm telling you, it should be called Timeless. And I go, okay. So that's how I got the name of the series, of the trilogy. And so it was a decision, and I decided to start off kind of light. I didn't talk about aliens in the first book because a lot of people, they'll say, yeah, maybe there's such thing as a ghost. I saw something kind of weird once. But if you say, oh yeah, and then there's aliens that have abducted me, and then they go, okay, I'll see you later.
Right.
People get, that's just like a bridge too far, right? It's a bridge too far for a lot of folks. So I thought I'd start off kind of dipping my toes into the paranormal world with 34 stories that happened to me in my life since age 4. That's when it all started. And so I did that. And then the second book, I went a little bit further. And then this last book, like you said, I let it all hang out. I talked about aliens. I talked about everything. And the good, the bad, the ugly, everything, because I felt that was my mission, was to do that. So I did it in 3 parts, each one going a little bit further. And yes, I have had alien experiences, and I have had, to answer your question about hypnotherapy, a friend of mine, Terry Lovelace, who would be a really good guest for you if you're interested, he was abducted and he was implanted. Now, if you're thinking, okay, another abduction implant story, this guy was the former assistant attorney general of American Samoa. He was the attorney general in Vermont. He has this long legal career. When it happened, he was in the Air Force. There were 2 of them who were abducted, and they were interrogated by Air Force intelligence. I mean, he still has a remnant in his knee that he has X-rays of. The government is interested in him. These unusual people come out, I'm sure they're CIA, have come out of the woodwork to investigate him. They've even sent him to hospitals, special hospitals, and doctors to be in and I totally believed him. And I remember telling him, I'm not sure. I think I've had some of those experiences, but I'm not quite sure. I mean, there's some, I'm pretty sure it is, but I've just never written about it. This is before I wrote Timeless Trinity. And he said, well, I met this lady. I haven't done it yet, he said, but Yvonne Smith, and she does hypnotherapy, and she works exclusively with people who have had alien contact. So I thought, well, I don't know. I'm kind of afraid of being hypnotized because I've been to those shows, those stage shows where they hypnotize people and they walk around and cluck like chickens and stuff. That's embarrassing. I don't want to do that.
Right.
I don't want to do that. And he said, no, I heard it's different. So I contacted her, and she laughed when I said that I was afraid. And she said, just tell me what you suspect. So I told her a bunch of weird things that had happened. And she says, I'm pretty sure, based on my, having hypnotized hundreds and hundreds of people, that yes, you have had alien contact. So we set up the hypnotherapy, and it was really nice. So you really don't lose control of anything. You just get really, really deeply relaxed. And if you're willing to do it and you can put aside your fear, it's amazing what comes out of your subconscious. And she doesn't lead you either. She doesn't say like, okay, right, you remember when the big guy with the big head came out of the saucer? No, she just says, how are you feeling? What do you smell? Smell is very important. And what do you see? What do you feel? And so that's how I pieced some of this stuff together. Other elements of these stories, well, at least with the alien stories, was I had remembered myself, conscious memory. And then some of it was kind of like when she broke through the log jam with the hypnotherapy, a lot of other information came out that I had been kind of hidden, that was hidden or masked, if you will. And one particular story, if you don't mind me telling, it's kind of interesting because it involves another person from 1977. My friend and I, I'll call him Ernie. I call him Ernie in the book. That's not his real name because ended up not being a nice encounter with him. But anyway, so we were on a road trip when we were 18 years old, and we ended up the first night in a remote area in Idaho, a place called Black Pine Peak, which just sounds mysterious already. We couldn't find the campground. It was dark, pitch black, and we pulled off the road by this clearing. Well, a bunch of the conscious memories I have are there were lights. There were weird lights. There was a weird smell. There were people around the car, but I felt paralyzed. At one point, Ernie went missing, but it was all like, kind of fuzzy and kind of swirling around. so I did the hypnotherapy, and it turned out this was an alien experience. It was contact, and it was an abduction, not my abduction, no. It was Ernie's.
Right.
And I had facilitated it somehow because I had been abducted earlier in my life. Well, anyway, so I contacted Ernie and I said, I didn't tell him right away. I just told him, hey, do you remember that trip we went on? Do you remember anything weird? And he mentioned all the things I mentioned, lights. Were there people around the car? He felt, like he was drugged or something. And then I told him, well, Ernie, I think this is what happened. I did hypnotherapy and this is what happened. And I'm writing about it in a book. And all of a sudden he switches from being very friendly, and I hadn't talked to him in years, to, no, I'm not going to do that. You don't use my name. I'm not going to say that. And you cannot use my name. And he got really mad and he hung up. So then I kept trying to contact him. And finally, he did contact me again. He emailed me and he said, you know what? I do remember something. I remember that I was taken away and it was all your fault. And I remember them telling me, this one's a squealer. You think he'd never seen pincers before. The word pincers, right? Pincers is a horrible, you don't want to imagine pincers anywhere near your body, right? So it's terrifying, yeah. So, and then he said, maybe I'll come out with my own book and get it published before you do. And something clicked in me. And then I couldn't tell, was he kidding? Was he angry? He seemed angry. He was definitely angry. But was he kidding, or was he, that's really what he remembered? So I thought, pincers, there's something weird about that. So I went back and looked at all my old poetry that I'd written, and I'd written some poems after that trip. And I had a poem that I named it, I Sold Out to the Aliens. And in that poem, this is from 1977, still, I have it in a notebook, from that time. It could be carbon dated, and you could figure out it was actually from that time. And in there, I say that I had sold out, and I had allowed this to happen in poetic language, not direct, narrative. And then I said, I mentioned pincers in that poem. And then all of a sudden, I got a chill, I go, oh my God, that's what he had just said. And then, so now I had, I had the recovered memories with hypnotherapy. I had my own conscious memories. I had Ernie's conscious memories. I had his weird denial about the whole thing, and then confession. And then the artifact, the poem that I had written right after this experience. So I put it all together and I put it into the book to kind of piece it together. Because people always ask for evidence. What evidence do you have? A piece of the spaceship? Well, right. No, I have all this stuff that I put together. And so I think that is the most interesting story of the alien stories that I have, because it actually involved this friend of mine. And I asked Yvonne about it, and she said that's typical. If two people have an experience together, one of them is always going to be hostile. And it usually breaks up marriages, relationships, friendships. Very rarely do you get two people who actually cooperate and tell the story. One will always not want to do it, and I haven't talked to him since. That was over 2 years ago. And it's really sad, because I would like him to tell me more, but he's obviously, shut it down, which in a way you can't blame him. Who wants to remember this stuff if it's traumatic for you? In my case, I figured out, yeah, it was traumatic, but it's part of my story.
Right.
And it is what it is, I mean, yes, it's frightening, but it makes sense to me based on everything else that's happened. So anyway, that's.
And so through doing this, it's given you validation of your conscious memories. Yes.
And that's, the people that are, Yvonne has a group called CIRO, which is Close Encounter Resource Organization. She's the president of CIRO. And I've met so many people from that group. And these are like Terry, former government officials, lawyers, professional people. And then there's, housewives and mothers and grandmothers and all different walks of life, all kinds of people. But they all share one thing in common. They have had contact, and it has deeply changed who they are. And some of them are quite traumatized by it and haven't quite put it all together, and others have moved on from it. So it is validation, like you said. It is more validation, and but as soon as you mention it, people who are not open-minded to it, a lot of people will just tune out and they'll say, "Oh, that person's nuts."
Right. I know.
And,
I'm having problems with writing my story and not having the evidence and not having someone else validate for me. So.
It is difficult, but it shouldn't. It hasn't stopped me, in spite of, because there are more people that'll say thank you for being honest about what happened to you. You'll get more of those than you'll get of the, "Oh, you're nuts," or they'll start diagnosing you and excuse me, are you a psychologist, a licensed psychologist? Are you a psychiatrist? No, I don't think so. And by the way, one of the most famous abduction researchers was Dr. John Mack from Harvard University. He's passed away now, but he wrote, I forgot the name of his book. I have it here somewhere, but Dr. Mack had hundreds of patients, and he believed all of them. And he was a doctor of psychiatry at Harvard, and they actually tried to get rid of him at Harvard because it was too controversial. So.
Wow, interesting.
But nobody's tried to get rid of me at Citrus, where I work. In fact, they've encouraged me.
Right.
In fact, they let me teach a paranormal course.
I was going to ask about that. So tell us about it now.
Yeah. I was reading your mind. No.
There you go.
So after I published the book, I kind of lost some of my fear, because nobody tried to fire me. Nobody tried to get me to retire early or commit me. So I know, okay. Right. I said, I'm going to go one step further. Not only am I going to write more books, I have 89 different stories that have happened to me. I said, I'm going to try to teach a class. How about that? So I put in a proposal thinking they'll reject it. No, they approved it right away. Now, it's not a credit class. It's a community ed class, but it's through Citrus College. So their name is on it,
Right.
And it got approved all the way through the president and the board of trustees. So obviously they trust me, and they don't think I'm nuts. And there's a demand. And I've been teaching it for about 2 years. I'm not doing it this semester, but I'll do it again in spring. And I get the first class I think I had 24 students, young people, older people, middle-aged people, men, women, all races, all ethnicities, all had one thing in common. They had paranormal experiences, and they needed a safe place to talk about it. And that's what I figured out the first night. They just want someone to listen, and they want like-minded people to listen to them and to be friendly and to let them talk. And then they wanted some kind of framework to understand what has happened. So that's what I did. It's really, I facilitate a framework for them understanding their own experiences. And it's a beautiful thing to see this in these people, and they bond very well. And we bring in guest speakers and stuff. So it's fun.
You talk about this in your book, in Timeless Trinity,
mm-hmm.
and you do tell us about one of the field trips you took on campus.
Oh yeah, we have the haunted playground. Our campus is a lot more haunted than I thought. I always kind of suspected it, because I'd heard some stories, but then I did some research, and I did some investigation, and I did interviews, and I started with I tried the security guards, but they wouldn't say anything. They're tight-lipped cop types, they don't want to talk about it. But I went to the janitors, the night janitors, and oh my God, they have stories, because they are there alone all night long, and they have seen so many weird things. So they told me different hot spots on campus, and we took the class to the haunted playground, which is the old abandoned childcare center. Nobody uses that facility anymore. So we went there with our instruments, and we had a psychic with us, a professional psychic, and she picked up on stuff. The students picked up on stuff. It was really exciting. It was really fun to do that kind of field, work right there on campus. It was only like 100 yards away from our classroom. We only had to walk out and walk 100 yards and go in through the unlocked gate.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
It was made for it. And it's creepy because you walk in there and it's not used anymore. It hasn't been used for like 10 years. So there's like this old broken down tricycle there. And we're just looking around. It's night, of course, and you get a creepy feeling, and people are, we found some kind of nothing really harmful, like a little girl spirit, and we found some kind of non-human entities that are kind of wandering around there. And so that was, it's really important to talk to people who, people like the custodians, so people, they don't even think about them. They go into class and the classroom's cleaned up for them, and they don't think about these people that work all night and they work by themselves and the weird experiences they have. Every single janitor I talked to had an experience. Some of them more profound than others, and some of them at that cleaning the old abandoned childcare center. They had to go in there and, they can't just leave it getting all dusty. So they went in there and cleaned, and they told me stuff about that place too, that validated our experience that we had there.
Which is really cool to have.
It is, yeah.
So you have a special friend, Anzar.
Yes.
Can you tell us about him and who he is?
Yeah, who he is. Okay, so he is an ancient alien mystic. That's the best way I can say it. When I first encountered him, well, not the first time I encountered, because I didn't even know who he was yet, but let's just say when he acknowledged me and as an adult and I acknowledged him was in 1997, and he referred to himself as the progenitor. And if you think about it, progenitor is the beginning of the line, right? So his explanation was, he's kind of like talking to a Zen master, when you talk to him, he's very Zen-like. And anyway, he described that he was the first. They had planted the seeds here on Earth. And so I'm thinking, okay, this is really trippy with what he's telling me. And I saw him in this vision, and he was kind of proto-human looking, very tall. And he was wearing like this coarse robe, coarse material. And he was revolving in space as he was talking to me. And but he didn't tell me his name. He just said he was the progenitor. That was in 1997. Well, I didn't tell anybody, although I wrote every word down, and then I, like I do in my journals, and that I used to write my stories. And then I drew a picture of him. And then I finally approached somebody at Citrus. It was an anthropology professor. And I went up to her and I said, I'm going to kind of take a chance here, but here's what happened to me in 1997. And this was like in the year 2000, so 3 years later. And I showed her the picture. I told her the story, and she looked at me and she said, you're a pretty spacey dude. I don't know about that. So I'm going, okay. So I kind of got shy and I said, okay, all right, never mind. So I felt like I can't tell these stories. Yeah, people are going to, here's my trusted colleague, and they're kind of thinking I'm nuts. So I better not go any farther. So that kind of caused me to retreat. But then, as I explained in 2016, Gene pushed me, right? Gave me a nudge. So then I started doing these spirit walks. Mm-hmm. And I'm not the kind of person that can sit and do meditation, because I need to be moving. So I walk, and I'll take like a 3-mile walk, and I'll walk up towards the mountains here where I live in Southern California. And I'll get into my meditative state, and then I will contact those that have passed on, and of course, the progenitor. And I tried it. And the first time I connected with him, after I revived this connection in 2016, he gave me his name, and his name was Anzar. And if you look up Anzar, there's all kinds of, mythical meanings of it, in the Middle East and in Africa, North Africa especially. And anyway, so I've been communicating with him, and he has told me some very interesting things. Like a year ago, he told me there would be a series of calamities, which is what it has been. All of 2020 has been a series of calamities, right? One after the other. Just when you think, oh, what else is going to happen? And he told me that there would be a series of calamities. Some would be natural, some will be man-made. There will be, some type of disclosure going on, which has happened, with the Navy and all that. All this stuff that he said has happened. And then when I say, oh, well, if you could tell me exactly when it's going to happen, I can go to the media and whatever. And he tells me, no. I tell you this not to predict, but to prepare. You can prepare people, but don't be in the prediction business. Because he said predictions can be wrong because there's so many variables, but preparations are never wrong. So he's like this very wise contact that I have that gives me direction and gives me knowledge that I can use, that I can pass on through my books or through the radio show or through posts on Facebook, that type of thing. And validation is important in what we do, right? So I was at a CIRO meeting, this Close Encounter resource organization, and I told Anzar, why don't you come with me, and I'm going to see if anybody can pick up on what's going on. And I hadn't told him about Anzar, right? So all I said at the beginning of the meeting was, I have a special visitor with me today, and I just want to know if anybody is going to pick up on this person. And nobody said anything till the end of the meeting. And then this one lady, younger lady, she's like in her 30s, I guess, and she said, I see somebody by you. In fact, they're really big, and they look like a Kachina doll, those Southeastern Indian Kachina dolls, which is, I said, okay, well, he's kind of proto-human looking, and he is very tall. And she says, yeah, she called him the big guy behind you. And I said, yeah, that's him. And so she said, what's his name? I don't know his name, but can you tell me his name? And I said, Anzar. And she goes, oh my God. And she pulled out her wallet and her driver's license, and she lived on Via de Anzar. That's the name of her street that she lives on. She was the only person who saw him that day, didn't know who it was, but that's the street she lives on. Of course, Via de Anzar means the way to Anzar. So we became good friends, and she was actually one of my co-hosts on the radio show until I said I didn't want to do them anymore. And so anyway, I got validation for it. And yeah, it's pretty amazing when you think about it, the journey that I've been on. And I always say that it's not that I'm special. It's just that I believe, I've had experiences, and I believe what has happened to me. And when I believe what has happened to me, I get more experiences, and it just keeps going.
It's like, but wait, there's more.
There's more. Exactly. Right. Commercial. Yeah. Right. They never end,
It's like, what's next?
Yeah.
You kind of sit on your edge of the seat.
Exactly.
You had some experience because it's, the Halloween time season. So I kind of wanted to talk about, you had an experience with a cursed object. Yes. If you're talking about, are you talking about the demon head or the sword? The sword. There was a knife. Yes. And it was a So, okay. So I had a shaman come into my house because I suspected, I knew there was something wrong in our house. My son and I, my son who's 19, or he was 19 then, in the middle of the night, both of us were being plagued by blanket tugging and bed shaking. In the middle of the night, people, it felt like somebody was pulling the covers, and I go, what in the heck? And I didn't get scared. I just thought, this is annoying. So I pulled the covers back, and my wife's a night owl, so she wasn't in the bed. She was in her workshop, and he had the same thing happening at the same time. And then sometimes the bed would shake, and I thought it was an earthquake, but it wasn't. It was just an entity, So I told my friend, the shaman, to come and do a house cleansing. And she did. And I always suspected that this bayonet I got at it was like what do you call it when somebody dies? An estate sale, right? And we were traveling through Oregon, and we stopped at an estate sale. It was obviously a World War II vet. And he had this bayonet, right? And it looked really scary. I mean, it looked used, like it had been used a lot. So I showed it to a friend of mine who's a World War II museum. He runs a World War II museum. And I showed it to him, and he said, this thing has killed a lot of people. And I said, do you want it? And he said, no, I don't want it. So I didn't think about it. I just had it on my mantle. Well, when I brought this shaman in, she's going around room to room, and she zones in on this bayonet. And she goes, this is very bad. This is a very bad object. You need to immediately put it in a black bag, put it inside of a trash bag, and get it out of your house. So it was a cursed object. So I decided, well, I got to get rid of this thing. So I thought, and maybe this wasn't the best thing to do, but we had a garage sale, and I put the table out, and I put
the bayonet there, and I put a sign that said "cursed bayonet, cursed knife." Just so you know, if you take this, there is a curse on it, right? So sure enough, then everybody was avoiding it. They kept asking about it, but nobody wanted it, right? Finally, this one strange man came up, and he said, "I would like this. How much is it?" And I said, $2. And he goes, "Okay." And I said, "Good. I want to get rid of this thing. Sooner the better." And I said, "You realize it's cursed, right?" And he goes, "Oh yeah." I said, "Okay. It's yours." So he never, luckily he didn't do anything else. He just walked away with it. But that was, one of the items in the house. We also had this box that had a Wiccan, had an upside down pentagram on it. And I told my wife, I said, "Where'd you get that?" She said, "I got it at a garage sale." I said, "It gives me creeps. I don't, So the shaman took that with her, and she said, "I think it's okay. Maybe I'm going to go and cleanse it or whatever." And I said, "Okay, you can have it. I don't want it in the house." So she took it to her house, and then she figured out, no, it had some kind of attachments to it.
Wow.
And she was able to cleanse it and get rid of it, get rid of the attachments. But anyway, yeah. So there is such a thing as these types of objects. I've had that happen,
Just like places.
Yes.
You had some uninvited guests in your home as well. Is that the same story there?
Yeah, I think they were elementals. That's what she thought. And we found out from the neighbors that there's a piece of property above our house in the hills here, and they own that property. And they said when they were up there gardening, they found some Indian artifacts. And I go, "Oh, well, there we go. This is Indian land, of course, right? Thousands of years ago." So that's usually when there's hauntings and stuff and that kind of stuff. It usually has something to do with that, unless there was a murder or some other kind of thing happening. But mostly it's when you're on sacred land and you're not part of that culture. That can be a problem.
Yeah, I kind of had some of those experiences myself, but they weren't tied. They were tied to the place.
Yeah,
not objects.
To the structure or whatever.
Yeah. Actually, I had a spirit guide that wasn't mine that liked me a lot and stayed with me. So I'm like, "I don't know if you're good or bad, so we're just going to ask you to leave."
Yeah. You have to be these kinds of things. That's why I have spirit guides that I know are tied to me, that are good, that the shaman recognized. And so whenever I do my spirit walks, I always ask them. I do a lot of prayers, and I ask for protection. And because the first couple of times I did spirit walks and opened myself up, it's kind of like putting a big radar dish over your head.
Right. You're the light.
It was, everything was coming at me. It was like those rock concerts where there's only one door, and they try to get everybody through that one door. That's what it was like. All these spirits, I don't know if they were good, bad, or whatever, they were just rushing at me. And because as soon as they realize that you can talk to them, oh my gosh, they will drop everything and go right for you. And some of them are rude, so they're not all nice,
Oh, right.
They want to be heard. They want to be heard, and they want us to contact. And I said, I need a bouncer. I need somebody to, like at those clubs in Hollywood, can't let everybody in. So that's what I did. And since then, I haven't had any problems like that. Because I was getting entities that would come in and tell me all kinds of stuff. That doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound true.
Right.
That's wrong. That's not right. And then you find out, well, that's not a good one. So.
You did talk to somebody pretty famous, Senator John McCain.
Yes, I can sometimes I can't always contact those that have died, but I was able to talk to him. And it was really cool because he was just like he was in life. He was worried about national security. Like he was telling me some things. He said, "Now I'm telling you so you understand, but you can't share this with everybody." So of course I didn't share some of the things.
Right.
But I was able to kind of talk about it a little bit without mentioning exactly what he said. But yeah. So and what was interesting, this was kind of early in my spirit walks, and I decided, well, I'm gonna try to contact his daughter, because wouldn't she want to know that I've contacted him? so I tried contacting her. I think she's the one that's on one of those daytime shows. Cindy is, no, that's the wife. Anyway, whichever one. She's on a daytime talk show. But anyway, so I tried to contact her. I'm sure she thinks I'm a nut. She never contacted me. So, but yes, and that's the whole thing. Even if you have a contact in the information, that doesn't mean people are going to listen to you or believe you. And you might have very good information. Like when that guy Khashoggi was killed by the Saudis, I decided I'm going to do some psychic investigation. So I was able to contact him, and he told me where he had been dismembered and where his body was put. And I told a friend of mine, I said, maybe I should tell somebody in the intelligence agency about this. Maybe I should tell them and I was told, not by the intelligence agency, but by a friend of mine who has military contacts still. He said, they don't want to hear from you. They don't, they work with psychics and they don't trust them. They don't like them, And I thought, okay, that's fine. I have the information if they ever need it,
Right.
And, but it was, so even if you do have information and you can do remote viewing and stuff like that, which it's been proven that people can do this, since the 70s.
I've had someone or several people remote view me. It's not comfortable,
No, it's not, because you can really do almost anything with enough attention and intention. The problem is, of course, is that it doesn't always turn out the way you want it to. And you can always be kind of turned towards the dark side, kind of like Star Wars, and whatever you do in that side is going to come back on you a lot. So you have to be really careful. In Dean Radin's book, Dr. Dean Radin, he's the chief scientist at IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, that was founded by Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, right? One of the Apollo astronauts. He's now dead, but anyway, Dean Radin, in his book Real Magic, talks about that, and he was part of Operation Stargate. When they were doing for the government, the CIA, and he said that basically, if you have enough intention and enough attention, you can make things happen. You can learn things. That this is real. This is real stuff. But he said you have to be careful. Like I said, that if whatever you start stirring up, it can come back on you. So you can't just do it willy-nilly. And that's why early on I decided, when I started contacting those that have passed away, I said, I'm just going to do it as a favor for people when they ask me. I'm not going to do it for a living. And I know there are people that do, and I think that's great. I know professional psychics, and they're very nice people, and they're really good. But I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to help people that ask me, and I will help them. And because it's not 100%, and it's not 100% accurate, and it's sometimes it's really difficult. The people that you contact, like I've had a case where this lady's father told me stuff and then said, you can't tell her. And I said, I can't tell her? No, I'm not ready for her to know this. And it was kind of some negative information. And then I thought, now I'm in a dilemma. Who do I owe my allegiance to? The person who's passed away or the living person? And I decided I'll respect the wishes of the deceased, because he said it would hurt her. So I thought, okay, he knows her better than I do. So I decided. So and then if you don't get stuff 100% accurate, there's people who are naturally skeptical who will say, yeah, you told me exactly what he did in 1947, but you got one of the names wrong. So I don't believe any of it, and it's like, well, wait a second. Isn't it pretty amazing that I knew exactly what
right? Don't kill the messenger, man.
Yeah. It's like you got like 80% of what had happened, but you didn't get that 20%, so they throw it all out. So it's kind of funny. If people decide to be skeptical, they'll find any reason to be skeptical.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Wow.
People who do it for a living, I mean, my hat's off to them, professional psychics and mediums. I mean, that is a hard job. That is a really hard job.
Yeah, it takes a lot of energy to do that work.
Yeah, very emotional.
Okay. Through your life, you've had many traumatic experiences that left you with PTSD in some way. You've been an amazing advocate in helping not only returning military men and women, but you've created a program called Boots to Books. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. My brother fought in Vietnam, 2 tours of duty in Vietnam, and he came back very much affected by it. Now, he came back physically, but mentally and psychically he was damaged, and he still is to this day. He's a 100% disabled veteran, and he also has physical problems due to Agent Orange exposure. You know, that defoliant they used in Vietnam, and so I saw how my brother was treated and how lots of veterans were treated after Vietnam. I was very young, but I saw it, and they got blamed for the war and stuff, even though many of them were drafted. So I decided when we started the Gulf, or the not the Gulf War, but the global war on terror, the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, and I started seeing students coming back, I said, I'm not going to let this happen to another generation. So I was highly motivated to start a veterans center and a veterans program. So a friend of mine runs the East LA Vet Center, Manny Martinez, in East LA. And by that time I had met Ginger, who's now my wife, and we worked together to start this Boots to Books program, which is the way Manny explains it is best. It's kind of like basic training for civilian life. And so when you come back from war, you're very much changed, and you need to learn how to be a civilian again. So that's what the transition program is. It was the first program in the United States. We were the first college to offer it as a credit class. So me and my wife Ginger and our friend Manny did that, and now that type of course is offered all across the United States and even internationally. I did some consulting for people in Norway that I know who are working with people with PTSD. So I mean, we love doing it. It was an honor to do it. It's the right thing to do, like Ginger always said. It's the right thing to do. You don't forget about people that have gone to war and come back. You know, they need a helping hand when they come back in that transition. So that's what we decided to do. And then for all these years, I was doing all that and helping veterans and started the veterans program. And then finally I had a veteran come up to me and said, well, Dr. Solheim, you were in the military. And I said, yeah, but I was never in war. And they said, but you were training for war, right? And he told me you were loaded up on the transports ready to go for invasions and a couple times. Yeah. And you worked in a prison. And I said, yeah. And then I finally figured out, oh my gosh, I've been very much affected by my military experience. And I found out I had PTSD, and that made sense because I looked at the pattern in my life, and it fit the pattern of all the guys that I've been helping, all the men and women that I've been helping. So I went and got help myself, and they said, finally, you realize, my veteran friends said, okay, now you realize what we went through. You don't want to accept it. And by helping us, you're just kind of, you're helping yourself, but you need to get help yourself. So, which I did. So it gave me even more insights into what is happening. And I kind of look at PTSD when people come back from war. It's kind of like secondhand smoke. When you have a smoker in the house, it's not just them getting the chemicals, it's the people in the house. So when you go to war and you come back, it's like a secondhand smoke effect. And the sooner you can help that person transition, the sooner you can help them, but also all their family members, their coworkers, their neighbors, everybody who's impacted.
Exactly. You took that a step further, I believe, in a September to Remember in Timeless Trinity, where you took that diagnostic for PTSD and you took it to a conference, or
yeah, I did the conference was supposed to be this summer. It was last summer, and it was Contact in the Desert, one of the biggest UFO conferences. And my research, I I did a survey. I surveyed all the members of CIRO, the group I told you about, and both in France and the United States. And I took the diagnostic criteria for PTSD that's used by the VA, and I changed it a little bit, for alien abduction and contact. And I surveyed them. And what I came up with is that these people had all the markers of people with PTSD that have been in combat. And it makes sense. And so I was able to come up with statistics, and I was going to present that at the conference, but then the conference got canceled. Well, actually moved to, they're going to do it next summer, and hopefully we'll be able to do it then. But that's the research I did. And I think also in September, in that particular story, I talked about
excuse me,
an attempted contact with an alien, and it was in the middle of the night. I felt like I was being electrocuted. I was paralyzed and I couldn't move, and it was only by me relaxing that I was able to break it. And before that happened, I saw there was like shadows moving around in the bedroom. Ginger wasn't there; she was in her workshop, so she didn't see it. But so that happened on the same night. And I've done a lot of research about it, and of course, that's one of the hallmarks, or one of the markers for alien abduction or contact, is that you get this, you can't move, because they're able to suspend time, or they're able to, kind of put you in a force field, I guess, of some sort. And that's how it felt. It felt like, all this voltage was going through my body, my whole body, but I couldn't move. I could still breathe and everything, but so that was in that, I think in that story, September to remember. And also the cover of the book, the Timeless Trinity book, there's a very scary looking alien on the cover, a female alien, a reptilian. And I also had that reptilian experience of her in September as well. Yeah, that reptilian lady there. So that was, it was quite frightening. And I talked to Yvonne about it, because she's interviewed and hypnotized hundreds of people over the years, for 28 years. And she said, we have very few experiences with reptilians. They're one of the alien races that usually people don't talk about, or that is usually the little grays, the big grays, that type of stuff. That's the type. So it was a very unusual experience. And what it was, just in a nutshell, I was having this very pleasant dream with my mom, who passed away in 1990. And all of a sudden, my mom morphed into this reptilian female. And she was extremely strong, and she grabbed me and put me up against the wall. And it was like I'm pretty big. I'm 6'3", about 260 pounds. I'm big. And she lifted me up like I was nothing, and she said, I can do anything I want to you, and there's nothing you can do about it. It was very threatening, but yet she didn't, other than lifting me up like that, she didn't hurt me. She could have. It was just like a warning, And I was told by Yvonne, the few stories that she has heard from people, it's the same story. They're very rough, the way they treat us. So I'm not exactly sure what the warning is, other than the fact that my comic book, villains in my comic book are reptilians. So I thought maybe they don't like my comic book. Maybe that's it.
Well, let's talk about Snark.
Yeah, it was a good segue. I didn't mean it to be a segue, but yeah, it turned out
perfect.
Yeah, Snark is a all ages comic book. So I got it behind me there.
Yep.
Yeah. And it was 37 years in the making. I wrote a comic strip for my Montana Tech Technocrat newspaper when I was in engineering school in 1982. 1982, when I was living in Butte, Montana, going to engineering school. And I started writing a comic strip for the newspaper called Snark. And it was about a half alien, half human entity that comes to the United States, in this case, and has adventures. And he's kind of like an innocent abroad. He doesn't know what's going on, so he's trying to figure it out. And so I started that in 1982. Well, that's actually why I dropped out of engineering school, because I decided I like drawing and writing comic books and comic strips better than I like calculus. So that was the end of that. But then it just sat on the shelf for all those years until last year, when a friend of mine, an artist who I've been working with other projects, I approached him and I said, would you be willing to illustrate a comic based on this comic book character I developed? And he said, sure, it sounds great. So that became Snark. And so he's been incubating for 37 years before he finally came out. I've refined the character a little bit and a little more backstory. He comes to Earth with a mission from the reptilians, of which he's half reptilian, half human. His mother was human. His father was reptilian. And so he's a hybrid. He comes to Earth to plan for our enslavement, basically an invasion, But when he gets here, he decides, I like the humans. I'm half human. I'm going to help save them instead. So he has a change of mind, which gets him in trouble with the home planet, right? So that's kind of the premise, the threat, if you will. And so he's in the comic book, he has different adventures, and so it's humorous. There's comedy in there. It's historical. It's science fiction, fantasy. It's a little bit of everything, and it's all ages, so it's appropriate for everybody from 8 to 80, or more.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Tell us about your play that you're working on and doing live.
Yeah. So, well, I've been writing since I was a little kid, and I've produced had two plays produced in my life. One in 2013, which won 2 awards from the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival. That was about a friend of mine who committed suicide. He was a Vietnam vet. That's called The Bronze Star. And then the other play that I had produced here in Los Angeles, and then was actually brought it to Norway with my college actors. We took everybody there. The Norwegian government paid for it. Wow. That was in 2016. And that story was called The Epiphany, and it was about my parents' experience in World War II when they lived under Nazi occupation. Mm-hmm. So those are the 2 historical plays that I've had produced. Prior to the pandemic, when I decided with a couple of friends of mine to start producing plays online, which now we're on our 3rd one. And what we've done is we create a 3D world with our technical people. We got wizards, that are amazing. And they've created a 3D world. They've transported us back to Montana Territory, 1866, Virginia City. And we have live actors performing live in this set that is online, and it's live. And so they're on a green screen. So, they're at home. They're all remote. Some are in Washington, some are other places in the United States, but they're all going to be in this artificial world we've created. Kind of like a video game, but it's live with live actors. And so the story, it's called Tough Trip Through Hell, and it was actually written it was an unpublished novel by a friend of mine, David Wilson, who also is suffering from Agent Orange. He's in the last stages of cancer created by Agent Orange. And it was his dream to always have the book published. I couldn't do that, but I could produce it as a play. So I'm hoping he gets to see it. He's very ill right now. I'm hoping he makes it. But October 28th is going to be the first episode. We're doing it in 5 episodes over 5 successive Wednesdays. So it's kind of like old-fashioned television, live television. We're doing it in episodes.
Where can people view this?
You can go to my website. I think what you had on there, or you can email me. My website, bruceolavsolheim.com, and there's information. It's going to be on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and Twitch.
Wow.
On the 28th at 7 p.m. Pacific. And we have a couple of Hollywood actors in there. We got a guy named Rico E. Anderson, who's been on probably every cop show you can think of that's still running. In fact, I think he's just started filming and I can't remember the name of the show. Anyway, he's been on all these cop shows. He's been on a Star Trek show, one of the spin-offs, So he agreed to do it. Well, because they weren't doing anything, So that's how we got to. Hey, we got to get these guys, doing stuff. So we were able to recruit them. And so this is the third. Each one has gotten more sophisticated. This one is the most difficult of the three we've done. And so it's not like you're in a Zoom call. It's a totally different kind of almost a movie, a part video game, part live theatrical experience, all in one. And it'll have an original theme song. And a lot of cool things going on with it.
Very cool.
It's very exciting. Yeah, that's part of the reason I decided to give up my radio show, because I'm working on these live online plays, because I think it's the wave of the future. I think we're going to kind of be in this footing for a while,
Yeah. Is there anything else that you didn't get to share tonight that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I'd just like to say that everybody has paranormal abilities, even if they think they don't. And it's good to cultivate them, but to do it in a safe way. So if you know a trusted friend who understands the paranormal, like a psychic or a medium or something, talk to them, learn from them, read books, and protect yourself, and maybe investigate it, because everybody, like I always tell people, have you ever felt like somebody was staring at you, and then you turn around and sure enough somebody's staring at you? That's an example of how we're all paranormal. That's an instinct that we've all had, that we used to have to rely on when we lived in caves and had to worry about saber-toothed tigers and whatever, cave bears. So we had eyes in the back of our head, with our sixth sense, right? So everybody has it. It's just not everybody believes it and cultivates it. And anybody can do it. And even if you just want to be a more intuitive person, or just be a more careful person, know your surroundings, it's good to do that, but to do it safely. I've made a lot of mistakes by trying to be too bold. It's kind of like some of these shows you watch where they go in and, okay, demon, come out, we're gonna take you on. I think that's very scary.
That's reckless.
It is reckless, and I think, although it's entertaining, I realize that people enjoy it, but in real life you have to be very careful. So I would recommend to your listeners, if they're interested, to read books and talk to very trusted people who know something about it and can help you on your path.
Right.
And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how you'll start to realize things that have happened to you and things that will continue to happen to you the further you go.
Exactly. Well, Bruce, thank you. Dr. Bruce, thank you for joining me tonight. It's been amazing.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate it.
I want to thank my viewers for watching. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or follow me on Facebook to get your woo-woo for your boo-hoo.
Very good. Thank you, Julie.